Hi, in this episode, we are keeping up with the theme of All in July, and today we are discussing one of the most important concepts that we all need to be hyper aware of if we are serious about playing big and doing big things in our lives and in our businesses, especially if we are doing this on the internet. And that is the concept of being overly bothered by one, other people's opinions of us, or two, other people's actions or other people's success, or literally anything. If we're overly concerned, overly bothered, it's a problem. And if you do not know how to wisely navigate either situation, they each do come with their fair share of negative consequences. And more importantly, you miss out on some major opportunities at the exact same time. And we don't have time for that. So this is going to be a high-level conversation strictly for the bosses. If that's you, stay and hang with me for a while. Welcome to All In with Allie, the podcast for online business owners and entrepreneurs who are ready to create the life and business of their dreams. Quick reminder, we are still doing the All In the membership summer promo right now. So I do one sale every single year on my big membership, the membership that includes everything, monthly coaching and instant access to all my programs, plus any program while you are a member. It's insane. And right now you can save $100 each month. And there's a ton of different bonuses as well. So that is still happening. It's happening all month long. I will put the link in the show notes. If you are looking for support in your business and you're wanting to do it in a very effective way and in a very cost-effective way, please check out All In. That is exactly why I designed it the way that I did. Okay, so the concept of being bothered, this is so important, okay? It's so important. Mainly because, we could go on and on the reasons why this is not the vibe. But the biggie here is the waste of time and energy. Again, whether, either however you look at this, whether it's you being bothered by somebody else, it's a waste of time and energy, or you are overly concerned with bothering somebody else and you're stressed about that. Also a waste of time and energy. And obviously we'll discuss why, but first let's talk about what I mean by when I say bothered. What does that mean? Because you'll hear people throw it around like, don't be bothered, whatever. To me, bothered is a less serious form of triggered. Okay. So what a trigger is, it's a psychological term or a mental health term that refers to something that affects your emotional state, often significantly, by causing extreme overwhelm or distress. A trigger affects your ability to remain present in the moment, and it may bring up specific thought patterns or influence your behavior. So that's a serious term. We probably all throw around the word triggered too much. I know I do. But what I really mean when I say triggered, I'm sure some people actually do get triggered out there, and that's different, right? If you are actually being triggered by somebody's behavior, then that is something that you would want to actually speak with a professional about, a mental health professional, and why that is, whether it's related to PTSD, past trauma, anything. But I think of I'm sure there's a spectrum of actual triggers and being triggered. So being bothered would be more on the less serious side of the spectrum. However, it still does carry its own fair share of serious consequences. So when I say bothered, what I mean is you are being affected, right? You're seeing something online. Let's say you're being bothered by somebody else. You see something online that affects you, right? So it stops you in your tracks. It takes you out of being present And it affects your emotional state and sometimes your behavior, right? You could go from being in a great mood or feeling super confident or focused on what it is, whatever the task is at hand. And then you see something or somebody and it totally throws you off, right? This is where our waste of time and focus and energy comes to play. Because now instead of doing what you came on the internet to do, now you're focused on somebody else who is completely and totally unaffected by you, but now your focus is on them instead of you and your own life and business. It's so important to discuss because, and let's talk about, which one do I want to talk about first? Let's talk about you getting overly bothered first. Okay, because it's so easy to be like, I'm unbothered. I'm unbothered by you, by whatever, I'm unbothered. I'm unfazed by, somebody's opinion of me or whatever. But at the same time, not being aware of how bothered you're getting or how actually quite literally bothered you're being versus not being unbothered at all. Right. And it all comes back to a level of awareness of your focus and of your emotional state as you're on the internet, as you are communicating with peers or, whatever the situation is. This can come up at any time. So let's talk about this from the angle of you getting overly bothered by somebody else. Okay. So again, here's what this typically looks like. You go on, let's say Instagram, you're either, just kind of mindlessly going for a scroll, or you are going to do something and somebody pops up and they do something that affects you in some way. In this sense, it's affecting you in a negative way. You see it, something about it is bothering you. And instead of just keeping on scrolling and keeping it moving, or, again, going back to the task at hand, it affects your emotional state, and then it potentially affects the action that you take next. So what I already don't love about this right out the gate is how influenced we're being by this situation. This is us being like a bag in the wind, right? Like that, when people are so easily influenced, it's literally like they're this bag flowing in the wind, and depending on what they scroll past on the internet, or what somebody says to them, or a song that they hear on the radio, or the mood of their kids, or whatever, they're just flowing up and down, left and right, depending on what comes across their path. They don't have a level of self-discipline to, number one, be aware that they're being bothered and that they're potentially going to be thrown off track. But number two, to stop that from actually happening. And a level of I think self-discipline is definitely the best term to use here. So when this happens, there's a lot of opportunities, or there's a lot of negative consequences that happen when we let this affect us at this level, when we let ourselves get overly bothered by somebody else. Like I said, right out the gate, number one, we're wasting our time, right? We're being this bag in the wind. We came for a task, even if it's just to relax and ease our mind for a little bit. And we're letting somebody else living their life throw us off. And now we're focused on somebody else. So it's a waste of time. This often can lead to negative comparison, right? You're bothered by something. Maybe they created some piece of content, or they're celebrating a really big win. And instead of feeling happy for them or saying like, oh, that's so interesting, their take on that, or the way that they did that, or how they navigated that situation, you instead are internalizing it and you're saying, wow, what I'm doing isn't as good, or what I'm doing is blank, right? You're taking your business results, whatever it is that you're comparing, and comparing it against whatever it is that you saw in a negative way. Another negative thing that comes up a lot when we're getting overly bothered is obviously judgment, right? When we see somebody doing something that we wouldn't do, or we maybe would do differently, instead of saying, oh, okay, that's an interesting approach to the situation and keep it moving, we instead stop and we judge, which is also a waste of our time and also not our jobs. This also runs the risk of us potentially acting out of integrity. How many times have you seen something online and maybe stopped and made a comment on it that later on you weren't proud of, or sent a DM, or maybe sent something to a friend and it was a little bit of a mean girl vibe, but it affected your state, but also it affected your behavior in a way that isn't in alignment with who you would consider your higher self. And then you also, when you're allowing yourself to be overly bothered by other people, you're missing a really, really big opportunity here. And we're going to talk more about this, but you're missing an opportunity to ask yourself some really powerful questions that could lead you down a path that is so much more productive for you, and also very illuminating in terms of, okay, why am I being bothered? Wait a second. This isn't about them. This is actually about me. And when you can go down that path and ask yourself these questions, not only can it lead you down a road that you've never been before, and you could actually create something brand new, or it could lead you to a discovery or something trajectory changing in your business. But again, a new layer of self-awareness that takes your empathy even deeper, and just makes you more of a badass. So we'll go more into that one in just a second. And then you bothering people, or your fear of bothering people. This is a really, really big one. And what I mean by this is you being your full ass self, being fully in your truth, unabashedly, unashamed, unapologetic online. That means that you're letting your flavor out, right? We've had this conversation. I often compare like who each of us individually are to ice cream flavors. We all have a flavor. When we're worried about bothering people too much, we end up making ourselves vanilla, which really doesn't bother anybody at all, but it also doesn't excite anybody very much either, right? Like I mean, vanilla is great, but there's no super fans of vanilla. But again, there's also no people that get overly bothered by vanilla. People just simply don't care. So you're essentially, another way to say this is you're watering yourself down. You're becoming this LaCroix brand, which we talked about in the last episode. And it's lame. It lacks flavor. It lacks pizzazz. And it lacks you. Actually, that's exactly what it lacks. It lacks you. So it's not even an ounce as good. So anyway, when we fear being all of who we are, we start to water ourselves down. Obviously, this is a major, major, major waste of time. This is us being affected by fear of other people's perceptions of us, which has nothing to even do with us at all. Not to mention, we cannot control it all. We can show up in a certain way, and we can position our brands and our messaging to lend to perceptions, but we cannot control other people's perceptions. They're filtering it all through their own life experience and their own stuff. So again, total waste of time. This leads to us watering ourselves down, playing small, maybe even some self-judgment. And also it leads to us then kind of contorting and trying to align ourselves to an audience that isn't our audience, right? When we are trying to appease people that aren't our people, everybody is not for everybody. One person is not for everybody. I don't care who you are. You know what I'm going to say next. Jesus Christ himself even had haters, okay? So if you are appealing to everybody, you're 100% watering yourself down. But if you are contorting yourself and changing your behavior and your messaging or whatever it is to appeal to people that are being bothered by you, then you are shifting your behavior for the wrong audience. You're now performing like a circus monkey for people that want to go to a circus versus where you actually want to be. Your own show, your own thing. So all of these things, obviously, all of it can be summed up with a waste of time and a waste of energy. So I want to tell you these two quotes that I came across. I've heard them before, but I came across them again when I was doing research for It Factor, which was my last masterclass. And this, when it comes to being overly bothered on the internet or being fearful or overly concerned with bothering people on the internet, these quotes are going to change your life. And they are this. First one, the bird in the cage hates birds that fly. The bird in the cage hates birds that fly. Okay. And then the second one is, it's very similar. And I would assume this quote is actually where the one I just said came from. But because I looked it up and there's nobody that actually, there's no credit for that quote. But then there's the official quote, which is, birds born in a cage think flying is an illness. And that was said by Alejandro Jodorowsky. He was a French filmmaker. How good is that? Birds born in a cage think flying is an illness. Birds born in a cage thinks doing the thing that they were literally put on the planet to do is an illness. And I believe people who are overly bothered on the internet, this is a big, big piece of it. We can apply these two quotes to that. That's often, I would say 9 times out of 10, what's happening. When somebody is overly bothered by somebody on the internet, not every time, maybe not 9 times out of 10, 7 times out of 10, I would bet it's because they have put themselves in a cage. Okay, if you are an adult, you have the ability to get yourself out of the cage at that point, out of the mental cage. You can figure it out. We all have in our own way. But you have put yourself, or maybe you've been conditioned in a cage. Maybe you grew up in the cage. That's fine. We've all come from our own respective cages. But there comes a point in time where you get to look around and you get to say, wait, is everybody around me sick? Or am I in a cage, not letting myself be free? And I'm making freedom look bad, right? Or whatever the situation is. That's usually what is happening in this instance. When somebody is being overly bothered by you doing you, it is because they are in their own cage and they haven't figured out that they have the key in the same cage and they could easily just unlock it and fly. Whether that be fly in their own direction, in the opposite direction, that's an option, or fly in their own right. But because they haven't figured that out yet, that perspective in the cage is often a very, very small, limited perception. And it can lead to a lot of really ugly behavior because you're in a cage and it's not fun being in a cage. We want to, as women who are growing big businesses and brands on the internet, and I mean big in your own right, whatever that means to you. But as women who are really going for it, that means that you have to allow yourself to be free. You have to allow yourself to tap into your own unique magic and own up to, number one, what it is that you actually want. And number two, how you want to go about getting it. And number three, who you are going to be in that process, in the building process, who you want to be, get to be, and should be if you are wanting to be a match for the thing that you want. Okay, so how you are going to attract in the results and the clients and everything that you want to achieve and experience as an entrepreneur and as the woman who is creating your life by design. What is a match for that? Who is a match for that? What is the version of you that's going to make that happen? So, on that same note, when it comes to anything, whether we're talking about being bothered on the internet, having a fear of being bothered on the internet, or anything else, we want to train ourselves and uphold a standard to handle these situations like the boss that we are. Okay? We need to have a standard for our life, for our business, for ourselves that we uphold. And we want to get clear on what this standard is ideally before you get bothered by something. Ideally, before you do anything else, like what is your standard? Because it's really easy to show up like a boss and to show up as, another way to say this is like the higher version of yourself when things are easy. When you are winning at life and business and things are going your way, it's really easy to be a decent human and to be kind and to be high vibe and to be generous and to be empathetic and all the things that we all, I think we would agree we want to be described as and synonymous with. But when things happen and things aren't going so well, or when we're being bothered or we bother somebody else, that is when we feel tempted to self-sabotage a little bit or to maybe be a mismatch for our standards when we're feeling good. And we don't want to do that. Okay, the more that you are at the frequency of your higher self, your highest business self, your the inner boss, however you want to think about it, the more you're going to attract in those level experiences and results in your life. Not to mention, the less energy you're wasting, the more focus you're going to be on your own work, on your own art, and the more people you're going to bother, which isn't a bad thing. So let's talk about how to handle both of these situations like the boss that you are. How we're going to navigate if you feel bothered by somebody else, and then how to navigate when you are the one who's doing the bothering. Okay? I'm going to give you a framework for both of these that is going to change your business and life. So, when you are being bothered by somebody on the internet, okay, right? You're scrolling, you see something, it's affecting your mental state, it's taking you out of being present, and it's potentially going to affect your actions moving forward. We are going to do 4 things, okay? 4 steps. Number 1, the very first thing we're going to do is we are waiting to react. Do not react quickly. And this is coming from one of the most compulsive, is it compulsive or impulsive? Doesn't matter. You get what I'm saying. Like I am a hothead. I am trigger happy. I am, okay. Historically, this person who did not take this advice, like I cannot tell you how many times I have reacted or overly reacted instantly because it felt good, because I felt like a little badass doing it, because I hadn't set a standard or I wasn't upholding myself to a standard, and then later on went on and regretted it. Because we all know, right? Like we all know this. Every situation is different in the moment, and then 10 minutes later, and then an hour later, right? Like if you've ever been in a fight with your partner, you know this. You know this. This is why I don't agree with this sentiment. Don't go to bed mad. I fully disagree on this 100%. Because if I'm angry with Chris right before bed, that is the angriest I am in the moment, right? Like I am the angriest the closer to the situation. And then time heals all, right? So if I can just go to bed, like if there's no resolving, or if it's going to be made worse by us having a conversation about it, which sometimes that's the case, sometimes it's not. If I sleep on it, I'm not going to be as angry in the morning. And this is the same type of situation, okay? Time heals all, including our hot ass heads, okay? So when you are feeling bothered by something and your little thumbs start itching, because they want to dance across the keyboard and oh my God, there are literally fireworks going off behind me if you're watching the video on YouTube. Why? Because I was doing the thumb thing. What is that? I don't know what's happening. Okay. Anyway, you start to get the itch to say some fiery ass shit on the internet. Wait. I'm not saying you can't say the thing. Okay? Because maybe something does need to be said, but you don't need to say it right then. This person is not going to know when you saw this situation, okay? So they're not going to know, and their audience isn't going to know, or whoever you're performing for in the moment is not going to know whether you saw it then or an hour later. So just wait. Put your phone down, walk away from the phone, tie your hands behind your back. I don't care what you need to do. Take a CBD gummy. I don't care. Put the phone down. Wait. Just wait. You can say it later, but don't say it. Don't be reactive. No, ma'am. Bosses, queens, they're not reactive. They lead. And there's a difference. Okay? Okay. So we're going to wait to react. Now, the next thing we're going to do when we simmer the hell down, if you're angry, if this is like an anger situation. But the next thing we want to do, the second step here, is we're going to get curious. We're going to get curious because we are evolving. We are women who value wisdom, and we are women who value, above many other things, our own relationship with ourself and our own level of self-awareness. Self-awareness is your key to freedom in so many different ways. So we're going to get curious. And we are going to ask ourselves the question that very few people ask when they are being overly bothered by something, which is, why is this bothering me? Hold up. Why is this bothering me? Let me take it, out of the surface, okay? Because there may be like a surface answer, like, well, this person's wrong, or this person is, the way that they're thinking about this is bad, or their action, or their or whatever. But take it deeper than that. Okay, and why is this bothering me? What's the deal? That's going to give you an answer. And you can do with that what you will. But then, okay, the third step here is we are going to ask ourselves 2 questions. Okay? Oh my God. This is actually a joke at this point. I'm so sorry. I know if you're listening to audio, I keep getting distracted with this, but when I tell you, like, my video, it's fireworks, it's balloons, it's likes, it's insane. This has got to be stopped. It's so stupid. Whoever came up with these stupid reactions on video is stupid. See, now I'm reacting. This is not my higher self. I need to simmer down. Okay, so we're going to ask ourselves two very important questions. The first question that we're going to ask ourselves is, can I do this differently? Should I do this differently? Would I do this differently? And if so, how? This is it factor level. This is entrepreneurship. This is innovation. This is the question that leads to the opportunities. Okay, that bothers me. I don't love that. That's interesting. That's an interesting approach. I wouldn't do it that way. Oh, you wouldn't? Okay, Miss Ma'am, how would you do it then? Okay, don't talk about it, be about it. How would you do that differently? And should you? Is that something you should take on? Is that something you should give a different perspective, give a different approach, take a different approach to? If the answer is yes, well, it's a damn good thing that you just got bothered today, isn't it? That actually, like, you just turned a pile of what seemingly shit into gold. Congratulations. And if it's not your calling to do something different about it, then stay in your lane. Move on. We're wasting time. So the first question is, can I do it differently? Should I do it differently? And then, go down that path. And then the second question, this is a really juicy one. Is she a bird flying and I'm in a cage? Oof. Am I bothered because she's simply a bird flying and I'm not? Have you been in your own cage in this way and you're just figuring that out? So let me tell you a story of something that I have experienced in the past that relates to this. So I follow a lot of brilliant, talented women. Actually, that's my standard, is I only follow brilliant, talented women. And they all have very different businesses and lifestyles. And, I don't want to follow people who do it like me and who live lives like me. That's boring. Like, I'm doing that. I want to see different examples and different types of people, and I want to see different approaches on social media. That's what I like my social media for. And when I do this, and these people that I follow, I will come across things that I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's one way to go about it. So one example is I don't even remember who the person is, and I feel comfortable sharing this story because there's a lot of women who do this online, and I've really changed my perspective on it. But in the past, I used to see this behavior and I used to cringe and make fun of it. But I'm talking about women who would like dance in their content. Okay. And what I would see is like women, maybe they're an energy healer, or it doesn't matter what it is that they do, but it's typically the case. It's some sort of spiritual business. And they're so free in their bodies and in their minds. And one of their ways to express themselves is through dance. And they will create content where they are very sensually dancing for the world to see. And again, I would see this and I would cringe and be like, oh my, like, how? And I would literally make fun, obviously not publicly. I'm not a bully, But like in my own mind, making fun isn't the word because that's not what I would do. But I would for sure pass a little bit of judgment on them and just like I almost like couldn't look away too. I'd be like, oh my gosh, and I'd be like amazed, but not in a good way. Amazed in kind of a judgy way. And would just sit there and be like, what are they thinking? Like, I don't get it. That's not whatever. And would fully judge. And then I started to really pay attention to these things. By the way, I'm not just sharing this stuff with you because I'm like, this makes good content. Let me share some things that I just made up that I don't do. I came up with these things because I navigated it myself. I got curious myself over my own journey. And trust me, it was not linear. But I was like, at some point, I began getting curious. And I was like, what is it about this that bothers me? And it wasn't that I thought what they were doing was bad. I was like, no, that's not. They're doing nothing bad. As a matter of fact, what they're doing is beautiful. And then from doing digging, I actually discovered that like, while I was cringing, there was also this like deeper admiration happening below the surface. There was this level of like jealousy happening. Jealousy that I didn't really understand yet. Nor I don't think I was ready to admit to myself, because then I would have to look at it and be like, okay, well, what's going on here? I would then have to take responsibility for it. So then it was masked with like a cringe and a very surface level judgment. But going deeper, I was like, wait a second. I actually admire that. Would I do that myself? Probably not. It's simply not my form of expression, right? In the same way that I'm not Buddhist. It's not like I'm Christian. I'm not Buddhist, but I don't pass judgment on anybody who's Buddhist. I actually admire people who are Buddhist. It's just not, so like, it's not my form of expression. It's not the way that I believe. It's not whatever. It's just not who I am. So I wouldn't do that. But also the fact that I admire it and the fact that like there's a little bit of jealousy, I realized I was the bird in the cage, witnessing a bird flying in a way that I've never flown before. Here's a better way to say it. I was a bird who was in my own cage witnessing a bird flying at a height I had never thought was possible for myself. I was witnessing a woman being so free in her body and free of other people's judgment. Whether she felt it or not, she's still like, she showed up regardless. And I was not allowing myself that same freedom. In my own way, my own proverbial sensual dancing, whatever that means for me. I wasn't letting myself do that. Do you see how much more impactful and liberating that awareness has versus just saying, ew? Can't be me. I was in a different person after having that level of like, wait a second. Why do I feel that way? Would I do that differently? Okay. Am I the bird in the cage? Oh, I'm the bird in the cage? Guess what, guys? You can be a free bird. You can be the bird flying in different areas of your life and still be so fully locked in a cage in other areas of your life. You can be a free bird in one part of an area and a locked bird in the same area, but another part of it. I was free on the internet in many ways, but still was vanillaing myself, LaCroixing myself in other ways. There's levels to this shit. It's an onion. It is an onion. There's so many layers. It's crazy. So we're going to wait to react. We're going to get curious. Why is this bothering me? And then we're going to ask, can I do it differently? Should I do it differently? Am I the bird in the cage and she's flying? And then the fourth step here is if a response is required, or if you choose to respond in any way, shape, or form, we first elevate. We're waiting to react. And in the meantime, before we respond, we elevate. What is your highest standard? If every single one of your clients were to see your response on this person's post, how would you feel? Or what would your response be? Would there be a response? If you fully believed that your actions held a certain level of impact, if you truly believed in your power as a woman, as a brand, as a woman of influence, as a business owner, as a mother, if you fully believed in your power and the impact and the reverberation of your words and your actions, what would your response be then? What would your response be? And would there even be a response? Now, I want you for 2 seconds to imagine the difference of what that response would be at that moment after going through those 4 steps and elevating yourself to what your initial reaction would have been. Night and day. I guarantee it. Night and day. I just saved a lot of people's brands and reputations. I just saved a lot of y'all from getting canceled, okay? Thank you. Or you're welcome. Okay, so that's when you're the one being bothered, okay? We don't have time. Guys, listen. If you really understood how powerful you are and the potential for your greatness that is within you, that is either currently bubbling to the surface or simply lying dormant, you would understand how beneath you it is to be bothered by people on the internet. It is so beneath you. Being bothered is a very human reaction, but it's also a very normal human reaction. You're not normal. Now, when I say bothered, I don't mean you see something actually that's a problem and you don't handle it, right? Like see something, say something. If you are seeing something, something that clearly goes against your integrity, your values, and it's something like as a leader that you should, that's different. That's different. I'm not saying that we become numb to everything that we see online. That's not what I'm saying. There's a difference between being bothered by somebody's behavior and being disturbed by something disturbing. Big difference, okay? Now, when you are the one bothering, you're the one who's ruffling the feathers, okay? In the cage, you little feather ruffler, you. When you're doing the bothering, darling, here's what we want to do. We're going to follow essentially the same steps. So we're going to talk through them because there's a different approach to them. Okay. So a lot of times we're not even going to know that we're doing it. Obviously. I mean, I don't know. I feel like if you're being fully you know it's going to get under some skin, and over time you get used to this. it becomes normalized because it's a thing, right? Like like when you are your true flavor, you're going to have super fans of that flavor. And then you're going to have people who are allergic to the flavor and who hate the flavor. And a lot of times these people don't say anything at all. Great. But a lot of times people do say things. So I'm talking about when you are being your full ass you and you are fully shining your light and somebody says something about it, whether they slide into your DMs or they make a comment at a family reunion or at a girls' brunch or whatever. They bring it up to you. Clearly, the feathers are ruffled. You have bothered them in some way. Here are the steps. Again, if possible, we wait to react. If this is on the internet, you wait to react. You do not need to respond. Even if they can see that you read the DM, we do not respond immediately. We already know why. So we wait to react. Buy yourself some time. Buy yourself some grace. Second, we're going to get curious again. But the question that we are asking ourselves this time is, am I or was I acting in integrity with who I am and my highest standard for myself, my business, and my brand? Whatever they're discussing or talking about, was that just me being me? Or did I do something here? Because guys, we make mistakes even when we're being our full ass selves, right? There's a big difference between somebody who's hating us, hating on us, or who hates us, or somebody who's genuinely giving criticism and feedback. Now, the package that feedback comes in matters, but there's a difference. Is this person hating on you, or are they voicing constructive or even non-constructive feedback that might actually be useful to hear, but maybe it just came in a shitty package? So if you ask yourself, was I acting in integrity with who I am and my highest standard for self, for business, for whatever? If the answer is yes, you're Gucci. That's on them. Okay? If not, we need to go deeper. What's going on here? How would I have done that differently? Is there some sort of action that needs to be taken? Whatever that is. Whatever is appropriate for the situation. So if a response is needed, the third step here is, again, we elevate. We then tap into that higher standard for ourselves, our highest self, the highest level of integrity. And if a response is needed, then after we channel that version of ourselves, now what's the response? And then after that, we celebrate. We celebrate. Okay, I made a mistake and I handled it like a boss. Or, nope, that was me and you were bothered. And I'm going to celebrate that because I am bold enough and fearless enough to not be bothered by you being bothered. To not be so bothered by you being bothered by me that I change my behavior or I retract that statement or do anything differently. And then you're going to keep doing you. And then you're just going to keep doing you. And it's okay. It's fully okay that you get bothered by somebody else being bothered. That's fine. Again, we're human. But just pause and take a beat and think about it. Think about how you would respond. And if a response is necessary. So do you see how powerful of a thought process that is and a process that is versus what 99% of the population does, which is none of that? which is see something that you don't like, say something nasty, or do something nasty, and let it impact your whole day. Or at least your energy, even without you realizing it. We're better than that. We're better than that, and we're bigger than that. We are leaders. Even if you are a leader of one, you are a leader. And you are a leader of one. You're a leader of yourself. And that's where it starts. You know how you start getting followers and being seen as a leader? You lead yourself. And this is one of the biggest tests that we experience as women who are growing businesses and brands on the internet, is navigating other people's actions and perceptions and our perceptions and actions on the internet, and triggers and opportunities for being bothered. I hope this was helpful for you. If so, please screenshot it, post it in your stories, tag me pretty, please. If you love me, you'll leave me a 5-star review on iTunes because that's really helpful, or subscribe, like and subscribe on YouTube. I need to get in the habit of saying that. But I hope this was helpful, because when I got this, I wish I had gotten it sooner. So you're welcome. I love you. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day. And don't forget, if you are ready to go all in your life and business, I invite you to go 365 with me, 365 days of you and me, a full year of all in. You can now join for $444 a month, which is $100 off the current price for the month of July only. I'll put all the details in the show notes. I love you. See you next week. Bye.